Hi guys, and welcome back to another astrology video. This one is pretty important because this is a major transit that I'm going to be talking about. It's Neptune moving into the sign of Aries. Neptune has been in the sign of Aries for the last few weeks at this point of me recording this video, but this is a 14-year-long transit. So even though we have just started, we still have a long way to go. This is a new type of energy that none of us have felt before because Neptune transits, it takes 164 years, I believe, or 184. It's longer than the human lifespan in order for it to go around the zodiac entirely. So we don't necessarily understand the changes and shifts of this Neptune energy as much as the other planetary shifts because those are a lot more common. They happen a lot more frequently. Neptune transits are slower moving, and Neptune is known to be more of a confusing type of energy itself. So I'm going to dive into what I believe the changes and the lessons are with Neptune in the sign of Aries, because, like I said, this is a big transit. It's going to be happening over the course of 14 years, and it's going to mainly be affecting the cardinal signs. So it's going to be Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn placements are going to be feeling this much more strongly because it's going to be affecting more powerful and noticeable places in their charts. Later in the video, I will go through each sign by sign, how this energy expresses itself and how you can expect this energy to play out in your life. So let's quickly do a little introduction as to what this Neptune in Aries energy brings. Starting off with, what is Neptune energy on its own? What is Neptune? So Neptune is known as the planet of illusions. It is the dissolution of boundaries. When you look at Neptune, Neptune's all blue and it's filled with gas. And so that's essentially the type of energy and vibe that it brings. It's very hazy, it's confusing. It's like seeing things through a fog. A lot of people relate Neptune, especially when it comes to relationships, it's like seeing relationships with rose colored glasses. Idealizing people, idealizing situations, having delusions of fantasy and grandeur, and believing in things that may not necessarily be real or material or physically present, right? It is illogical. It is very sensitive. It is also very intuitive. It is very creative. It's getting messages through dreams, through meditation practices, through drugs and alcohol as well, because Neptune rules substances that people go towards for escapism. It's escapist tendencies. It's doing things that kind of make you forget about your mortal existence. So someone who has heavy Neptune placements can be someone who falls into idealistic ways of thinking, is constantly trying to see the good in everything. And that's also a bit Jupiterian, but Neptune is more so just like falling into the illusions of things. It's, in one hand, it can be manipulative, or could also be easily manipulated. It's gaslighting as well. Neptune isn't necessarily classified as a benefic or a malefic in traditional astrology simply because Neptune is a modern planet. Therefore, it wasn't even known to exist back when traditional Hellenistic astrology was created and begun. So a lot of the ancient astrologers did not even know that Neptune had existed. Neptune is more of a newer type of consciousness reality that we have now come to know in our experience, in our more recent experience. Neptune has to do with creativity, photography, music, the arts, expressing yourself in creative manners as well. So now that we know all of these different definitions or themes that Neptune represents, let's dive into a little bit of what Aries represents and what kind of energy Aries is, because these are two very different types of energies. But we're going to see how they both work together and how this energy can play out in the grand scheme of things. So Aries energy is very individualistic. It's very much what's best for me. Since Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, it is like the baby of the zodiac. When you think about a newborn child, the child, when it needs something, it cries out for its mother. It cries out for its own needs to get met. And it expects its parents, expects its needs to get met with the utmost urgency and importance. It doesn't care if the parents are tired. It doesn't care if just got off of work and they need to rest and they've only slept for an hour and they're really sleep deprived. The child does not care. The child is hungry. The child needs its diaper changed. The child just wants to be held. And so it will scream and it will cry and it doesn't care about how the other people around it feel because it really does not have the type of perception for that. So that's think of Aries as that kind of energy. Aries is kind of like, I need these things, I want these things, and I'm going to get these things. I don't care about how you feel about it. I don't care how it affects you. I need to do this and I'm going to do it and I'm going to get what I want. To some people, that can be abrasive, is one way to say it. But we can see the way this energy starts mingling with each other can be a little bit complex, right? So when we mix these two energies together of Aries and Neptune together, what we can see is a lot of spiritual ego coming out, a lot of spiritual narcissism, people falling into traps of believing other people's delusions, right? So one of the things that we can see play out over these next 14 years is certain figures, certain leaders in society, even simple influencers, because now everyone can have a platform, right? People believing in their own grandiosity, their own illusion, and saying it with such a confidence that it influences other people. It could definitely be more of a rise of certain cult type of behaviors, as we can see with like the Manosphere, Red Pill podcast type of stuff. It's kind of funny because Aries is very masculine. It's ruled by Mars. It's all about doing what's best for the self, essentially getting lost in the illusion that your needs are so much more important than everyone else's needs, and not really caring about how you affect other people by getting and obtaining those needs. And it can be a very dangerous type of ideology. Right? As I was mentioning earlier, the ancient astrologers never really said whether Neptune is a malefic or benefic planet simply because it did not exist. However, due to my own experiences with Neptune, because I've had Neptune transit through my first house and I've had it oppose my Venus as well, I can say personally that Neptune is not an easy planet to deal with. Neptune can be very difficult simply because it leaves you in this state of confusion. It leaves you in this state of illusion. You don't see clearly. Everyone else around you can see what's happening except for you, type of deal. That's what it feels like when you're going through a Neptune transit. So yeah, there's with this transit, there's going to be a lot of identity reinvention. People are going to suddenly realize that the type of person that they've been is no longer who they're going to be. A lot of this could be triggered from like spiritual concepts and essentially like a spiritual awakening, because that's what Neptune is. Neptune is spirituality. It can also rule things like religions, even though Jupiter is a little bit more religious than Neptune. Neptune is more spiritual. It's more intuitive. And so you can have an identity shift simply because you're now more spiritually connected. You're now more connected to your intuition and you're unlocking certain creative channels and pathways that you honestly never even thought was something that you had within you. You know, you suddenly become a different version of yourself, a more creative version of yourself. That prior to that, you may have been someone that was more materialist, may have been someone that was more needing to see the facts, needing to see the truth, the scientific papers and studies and all of that stuff. But when Neptune's there, Neptune kind of doesn't need that. Neptune is just like, I know because it feels right in my gut. It's a feeling based type of thing. And that's why it can be really easy to get lost in illusion and in fantasy, because a lot of it is very much like, I feel this deep down to be very true, like in my soul. But there's no way that you can prove it or explain it to everyone. And so, of course, you come off kind of as crazy. It's also the energy is kind of like the warrior meets the mystic, because Aries is the warrior energy and Neptune is the mystic. So it's essentially, we can see a lot of people in the spiritual community starting to rise up and actually have a voice and speak up for issues and things that they really deeply believe in, right? So we can see a lot more spiritual warriors, and we can see a lot more creative leadership, people in music, in the arts, actually speaking up and using their voice, using their creativity to speak out on things that are affecting them and are affecting the collective. Because I don't want it to frame this as if Neptune in Aries is all bad and it's going to be a super tough and negative experience, because there are good things that come from it. There's good things that come from every single transit. This is just going to be one of those that, in order to get to that, there's going to be certain people that use this information and that use this time to help others. And then there's going to be other people who use this time to, that they think they're helping others, but they're actually leading them into like psychosis. And then there's going to be other people who are actually using this energy as a way to like manipulate and lie and steal and to just get what it is that they want out of life and not really care about how it makes other people feel. But Neptune will eventually show them that it's necessary to care about other people, because you can't just only care about yourself. That's going to be the ultimate end to this transit. It's people beginning to understand that you cannot only just care about yourself and you can't only care about other people. It needs to be a balance between caring about yourself, your needs, your wants, and your desires, also caring about the wants and needs, desires of the closest people around you, the collective, and advocating for something that's better for the collective good of all, not just for self and not just for others, because you can't over sacrifice, which was Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Pisces is lack of boundaries to the point where you self sacrifice, you are a martyr, you are a victim, you allow people to just do whatever it is that they want because you just want other people to be happy, even if it's at your own expense. That was what we just went through with the 14 years of Neptune and Pisces. And Pisces placements had to go through that. Virgo placements as well, because that was happening in your first and seventh house axis. That was a very trying time of learning your own boundaries, learning what's best for you, and how to care for yourself and other people, right? Neptune in Aries is bringing balance to that, because before it was too much, caring too much about other people, overextending yourself. Now with Neptune in Aries, people are going to start caring more about themselves and what's good for them, but trying to find that balance. Of course, you're going to have the people who are just kind of starting out on their spiritual journey and who may have only been pushing forward and doing what's best for them without caring so much about what happens to other people. And they will also start seeing what happens when you only care for yourself and how it deeply affects you as a person. When all you ever care about is yourself, you eventually lose all the closest people to you. You eventually end up alone. You eventually isolate yourself from everybody, and you create a reality in which you essentially outcast yourself from the group because you are so concerned with yourself. So this transit is teaching both sides how to not overextend, how to not overgive, but also how to not be so selfish and so self-serving that you end up pushing everyone away at the same time. There's also going to be, we may notice a lot of rises in people, especially in the spiritual community, but just in general, of people thinking that they're the chosen one. Because remember, Aries is very like egocentric. And I told you guys that this transit is going to bring a possibility of like spiritual narcissism, spiritual ego. So people essentially believing that they are like the Messiah, they are God, they are the greatest gift to humanity, and they are here to save the world. And they may start, just because of how well they articulate themselves, how well and how confident they are when they speak, they may develop a mass following of people who decide to follow their teachings and do what it is that they say. So I would definitely be mindful of that. Be mindful of the content that you're taking in, the people that you're listening to, especially in this age of technology. And we're going to talk a little bit more in another video about Uranus going into Gemini, because that's going to change the landscape entirely of how we communicate with other people, especially over the internet, and how we share information with each other. And so it's going to be very, very, very crucial and important for people to develop their discernment on what type of content they're taking in, who they're listening to. This is also going to be a really great time for new creativity. So, like a lot of new ideas, fashion, music. People are going to be able to express themselves in different types of ways. It's more about your own individualistic style, as opposed to like having certain brands or certain like big companies setting the rules or the stage for what is the newest style, what is the newest trend. Now it's going to be placed back onto the individual. It's kind of like now each individual has their own chance and opportunity now to create a style, to create a trend. Now that we've gone over all of the basic introductory stuff of what this Neptune and Aries transit can bring for us as a collective over these next 14 years and the things to look out for so that you can be a little bit more prepared. Let's go a little bit deeper into sign by sign how it will be affecting you based off of what house Neptune will be in your chart based off of your rising sign. So I would look at your sun, your moon, and your rising sign, but your rising sign specifically is what's going to determine what house Neptune falls in. Once again, you could also look at your sun and your moon as well to just get a little bit extra, more nuanced understanding because it will also be affecting you in that sense there. But the rising sign is the most important one. Another quick thing to add before I jump into that is that every single chart is different. The placements where you have your own personal planets can also affect the way these interpretations go. So you could be, I don't know, a Taurus rising, and this is happening in your 12th house, which has to do with the subconscious mind. It's super physical. It doesn't, that's not a house that generally deals with relationships. But because your Venus planet is being activated by being in the sign of Libra and opposite to it, now your relationships are affected, right? So not only do the houses and where your rising sign is affects the interpretation, but also where your planets are in your chart and whether or not they're being aspected by Neptune also adds an extra flavor to it. So if you do want to know more information about how this Neptune transit is going to affect you specifically and your chart and your planets, I do offer readings down below. You can check on my website and book a reading through there. I offer mini readings, which is just a quick breakdown of your birth chart. You can add in the transits as well, so that way you can see how the transits are currently affecting you. And then I do even more longer full birth chart reads, going deeper into your human design, into your numerology, all of that stuff synthesized into one reading so you can have a full comprehensive analysis of who you are, what you're here and meant to do. And if you want to know how the transits are affecting you, you can also get that added onto your chart reading as well. So now that we got all that stuff out of the way, let's jump into Aries rising. So if you're an Aries rising, this is happening in your first house. That has to do with your identity, your sense of self, your physical body. So Neptune transiting in this house, I know exactly what this feels like because I literally just went through this transit. I'm a Pisces rising. I just had Neptune in the sign of Pisces for the past 14 years. It's a major identity rebirth. That's essentially how I got started into astrology. That's how I got interested into astrology when Neptune started transiting into my first house, is when I started opening myself up to these more esoteric practices, into learning about the tarot, astrology, human design, all of that stuff. I started falling into the rabbit hole of just understanding the more spiritual side of things. And prior to that, I was a very scientific person. I even got my degree in bachelor's of science. So I never was a believer in astrology. I thought people who believed in astrology were stupid until I started learning about it myself. And then I'm like, wait, actually, hold on. This is kind of weird because it's, why does it keep being accurate? That's kind of weird. You start learning about synchronicities and things of that sort. And you essentially have a whole identity crisis because now all of a sudden you have been spiritually awakened. You may go through a dark night of the soul because that's usually what happens, what triggers your spiritual awakening. That's what triggers you to learn more about these things, is by going through a dark night of the soul, not really knowing who you are, what you're meant to do here, what your purpose here is on the planet. That's what Neptune kind of does. It just kind of confuses the heck out of you, confuses you on who you are, what you like, what it is that you're about, so that you can go on the search and on the journey for it. And it's kind of like a hermit type of journey where you kind of just like go off into the mist and into the mountains and meditate to go and find God and stuff like that. Yeah. That's kind of what Neptune in the first house type of transit is about. You may also decide to dive into certain things like, psychedelics and drugs. You may do it as a way to escape from your problems, but also as a way to connect into higher consciousnesses. But I would also, once again, be mindful that you're not doing it from a place of escapism, because you can easily fall into paths of addiction as well, because Neptune does rule things like addictions. So I would be definitely mindful of that. It can also have a possibility of affecting your relationship simply because it is on that first 10th house axis. So I would also be mindful of any kind of relationships that you get into over the next 14 years. I know it sounds crazy because that's a long time. It's like, what do you mean? But there's a tendency to over idealize people, over romanticize, just over idealize situations in general. You're not you're trying to see things for the absolute best case scenario. You have your rose-colored glasses. It's kind of like a very naive type of energy, especially in the sign of Aries. Can be very naive, just like it feels right, it looks right. Let's fucking go. Like let's full speed ahead. Let's take the reins. Let's go. And you may just dive headfirst into something that actually turns out to be completely different. And you don't realize it until the transit's over and the fog has lifted, and you're like, oh my God, how did I not see this for what it was? How was I so lost in the feelings, right? Because it feels so good. It feels so amazing in the moment. And it's just so confusing because it feels so good, but at the same time, something feels off and you're not sure why. And you're trying to figure it out and you're trying to get all these answers from astrology and the spiritual gurus and the tarot and all of these things. And it's like for a while there, like there were certain moments in my experience where like, yes, you did get like the intuitive hits where you feel like you're getting messages from the universe, but there was also a time where it genuinely felt like I wasn't getting any messages at all. Like it felt like I didn't have that connection anymore. Like it got severed and it was kind of like you're on your own to figure it out. You have to use your own inner sight. You have to use your own intuition to decipher these situations so that you can get yourself out of them. We're not here to hold your hand, through it all. So I hope that made sense. I know it was kind of a lot, but I just kind of want to share a little bit of my experience too, because I've been through it just to help you better understand how to deal with this. But you will come out of it on the other side, just feeling a lot more grounded. You will have the knowledge of the spiritual concepts. You will be tapped in that sense, but it won't be something that you're so lost into because I've seen that and I've been there of getting so lost in the spiritual space that like you kind of become delusional and you start losing touch with reality and the material. But once again, at the end of it, you do realize how to have that balance of the spiritual and the material and not getting too lost in the spiritual because ultimately we live in the physical. We are material, physical beings. We cannot solely think about these higher dimensions because we're not there, right? We are physical beings currently. We can understand those concepts and those themes, but the rest of the world and the collective isn't there yet, right? So we have to bring it down to reality and work from that more grounded space, right? So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun and it's going to feel good at times. And some days it's going to feel very confusing. Once again, at the end of this, you will have a better understanding of who you are, what it is that you're meant to be doing in this world, and a more grounded understanding of your spirituality and your place in the world in general. Now, Taurus rising, this is happening in your 12th house. The 12th house is a very interesting place because it's the subconscious. It's not a physical here and now, what you can see. It rules the dream space. It rules things that you can't even see. Sometimes you can't even conceptualize that they're there. It's kind of like the belief systems that lie deep down in your subconscious that you aren't even aware are programs that are running your life. This transit's going to be turning on your spiritual abilities to the highest sense. However, it can also be extremely destabilizing as well, because once again, as I was speaking with Aries, we don't live in a spiritual world mainly. We are spiritual beings in a physical material world. And so it can be difficult to live in that space or have these types of like intuitive psychic abilities and then trying to ground them in this reality. I would be definitely mindful of your mental health and making sure that you have grounding practices in place because it's also very easy to get lost in the illusions or any types of delusions that you're telling yourself. So essentially, your subconscious mind is upgrading before your physical upgrade because after these 14 years, Neptune is going to be going into your first house, and that has to do with your identity and your sense of self. But in order to change your identity and your sense of self, your subconscious mind and the belief systems and programs that you're running in there, those have to shift first. So Neptune coming into your 12th house it is rewriting those subconscious beliefs and programs so that when Neptune does eventually shift into your first house, you actually start shifting into this new identity of someone who is more spiritually attuned, someone who is more spiritually connected. You may notice that you have more of a need for like solitude and rest and just wanting to be away from the world because Neptune is very much about isolation. It's connecting with the world through meditation, through isolation. By connecting in a more spiritual sense, they can connect with the all, right? So you may find yourself gravitating more towards spiritual practices that kind of connect you to the all, the one source consciousness. And that's your feeling of security. That's your feeling of safety, of knowing that you can come back to your spiritual practice and connect and you feel recharged in that sense, because it may feel a little bit difficult to connect with other people at this time simply because you're going through so many different spiritual upgrades and downloads. Not every single person will be able to understand them. Next, we have Gemini rising. So, Gemini rising, this is happening in your 11th house. 11th house has to do with your friendships, groups of people that you hang around with, your supporters, essentially. It also has to do with your long term goals and your vision. So, a lot of this is going to be changing now. It's going to feel a little bit confusing. You would like to have your groups, your friendship groups, your social circles, and the people that you're around to be a little bit more spiritual, people that understand the more esoteric practices, people who understand the different like spiritual concepts, simply because you're kind of going down that path as well. You want people that see the bigger vision. You may have certain ideas. I don't want to say delusions, but you may have like very big ideas for what you expect to manifest and what it is that you expect out of yourself, what your goals, your dreams, your visions are. Because Neptune is very like big thinking, idealistic thinking. It's not, like I said, it's not grounded in reality. And so we can kind of have just like delusions of what we think our reality would be like. And we want to surround ourselves with groups of people and other environments, right, who support these ideas. So I would be very mindful as a Gemini rising that you don't get caught in a cult. You have a lot more of a susceptibility with this type of transit to just look for and search for a community of people who all kind of believe in the same thing and have a very similar goal and vision. You can also possibly be a person who like leads a cult. Like it could be a possibility. So I would just be mindful of that. It can also, though, on the opposite end of that, you may feel like you don't really belong anywhere simply because you are looking for certain groups and environments that see things the way that you do. And it may be difficult for you to find them. And so it can also feel kind of isolating in that sense. So it can kind of go either way. Your vision and your hopes and dreams for the future is changing. And so you're trying to look for and find people who see things in the same way that you do. But once again, just be mindful that you guys aren't all like falling for one big giant delusion, okay? Cancer rising, this is happening in your 10th house. So the 10th house has to do with your career, your reputation, your public image. When Neptune's in the 10th house, it can be very confusing because it brings confusion to your career and your purpose and what it is you're meant to be doing. But one thing I have noticed as someone who lives with this placement natally, it seems to work itself out better if you go towards a more spiritual or healing path, simply because Neptune is about helping others. It is compassion. It is wanting to be of service to others. And so if you lean more towards those types of career paths and purposes, something that helps other people, something where you can express your spiritual gifts or your gifts of compassion, your gifts for love. But overall, if that's not someone who you are, like you're not someone who you don't see yourself doing like something spiritual, you never seen yourself in like a healing profession, you may all of a sudden start going down that path, even if it's just random circumstance of events, like you weren't trying to go down that path, but somehow circumstantially you end up in that path because you needed to get a new job and this was the only job that was available and you didn't think you would like it, but all of a sudden now you kind of like it and you're like diving deeper into certain topics, and you know what I mean? So like the way these transits kind of work out is like you don't always expect any of these things to happen. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, I was already, like, on the spiritual path. Like, I wasn't expecting to like astrology ever in my life. I wasn't ever expecting to make videos on astrology. But then Neptune transited in my first house, and all of a sudden I got interested in astrology and I started learning more about it. And all of a sudden I'm making videos about astrology, you know? So that's kind of the way these giant, longer transits kind of work out. It's not something, especially with Neptune, it doesn't give you the full path. It doesn't give you the full picture. It doesn't let you see what the end goal is. It doesn't let you see what that's supposed to look like. It just kind of slowly pushes you and nudges you down that path. And it gives you like intuitive nudges. It gives you those intuitive hits, and you just keep following the synchronicities and you keep following the signs. And then eventually you kind of end up in this weird place that you never would have thought because you didn't see it, but it's kind of cool now, you know? All of a sudden it's like, oh wait, like I never thought about this, but I guess this is what we're doing now. I guess this is what I was meant to do all along. So you're not meant to follow a traditional path. You're not meant to do what everyone else is doing. You're meant to create a new path. Also, once again, Neptune is very creative and artistic. So it doesn't necessarily have to be spiritual. It can just be a creative, artistic path. So making sure that you're allowing yourself the space to be creative, to be artistic, to explore your spirituality if that's something that you want to do. If you don't want to do, that's fine. But if that's what the universe wants you to do, trust me, you'll get forced down that path. Like it's going to come to you regardless. Okay, next we have Leo rising. Leo rising, this is happening in your ninth house. Ninth house has to do with your belief systems, it has to do with like religion, higher learning, it has to do with travel as well. You may travel more to experience different type of spiritual understandings, different type of spiritual concepts, right? You're the type of person, or at least with over these next 14 years, there's going to be a phase and a time of your life where you want to deepen your understanding of higher concepts, of spiritual concepts, traveling more so that you can connect more to your spirituality, to God, or whatever it is. Desire to explore life in a much deeper way through travel, through learning. You may take classes, you may take courses. You want to just become like more of a master of whatever craft that you have, whether it be an artistic craft because Neptune rules the arts, or a spiritual craft because Neptune rules spirituality. I would also be mindful with this placement because the ninth house has to do with like teachers, right? So being mindful that you're not like falling prey to any type of gurus, or even becoming and portraying yourself as a sort of guru because of this, especially as a Leo rising and having it be in the sign of Aries. It can definitely bring in the spiritual ego and getting lost in other people's teachings, or losing yourself in thinking that you know everything and everyone needs to listen to you because you've done all of the travels and you've done all of the work, right? You've done the mastery. And so you know more than everyone else, right? No, I'm joking, by the way. I don't know if you can tell I'm being sarcastic. So, yeah, don't get lost in ideologies. Don't just have blind faith in other people. Just try to stay grounded in this time and knowing that you are learning different ideologies, you're experimenting with different types of ways of thinking and being, you're learning from different people, but don't take everything as like pure concrete, this is the way. Because there are multiple different ways and multiple different paths. And you want to try and stay grounded in that. No matter how big you get, let's say you start sharing your ideas with other people, because the ninth house is definitely like sharing what it is that you learn with other people and kind of being seen as that authority figure in that way. If a lot of people, I notice, once they start gaining a certain level of fame or following, they can easily lose themselves in thinking that like, oh, I know everything. I know the best. Like I am the best one in this field, and like I am the authority figure in this field. And eventually Neptune might knock you down a few notches once the transit's over, or even once, Saturn gets through with you. It's trying to remind you also to stay grounded and not letting yourself get lost in that. Now, Virgo rising. Virgo rising, this is an interesting place that it's happening for you because this is happening in your eighth house. And eighth house is another one of those hidden houses. It has to do with intimacy, it has to do with shared resources. So it also has to do with your trauma and your like deep psychological wounds that I would say that you've inherited, like, come through your family line. That's how I've seen them play out. It also has to do with like more like sexual trauma as well, has to do with sexual intimacy. So I would say with Neptune in the eighth house, when it comes in terms with that type of stuff, you may not see relationships super clearly, especially when it comes to like getting deeper into like the intimacy spaces. You may have certain ideas of what it is that you want out of a relationship, how you want your relationship to look like, how you want to be like sexual and open with your partner, or maybe not so open with your partner. Neptune is a little bit more of like an open, free flowy type of energy, though. I would see the possibility of maybe having more like open types of relationships, having more shared intimacy with other people and stuff like that. But just being mindful that like making sure like is that really what you want, or are you kind of deluded into believing that's what you want because other people are like convincing you that that is. Like really tap in deep with yourself. Are you trying to run away from certain problems and certain things that have happened to you and you're like escaping through pleasure, because that's one of the things that can definitely happen with the eighth house? Are you escaping through other people rather than just dealing with your problems head on? Or are you actually trying to do something like a spiritual practice, a sexual spiritual practice? Because that's another thing that can show up with this. It's like sacred sexuality and sexual spirituality, like tantra and stuff like that. So diving deeper into how to use your pleasure as a form of spiritual connection. It can bring up a lot of shadow aspects as well, because doing that type of work where you are most intimate with somebody and you're using it as a way to evolve and explore and essentially develop your sexuality and use it as a vehicle of higher and deeper levels of connection to the divine, that can bring up a lot of things that you may have repressed, things that you may have left hidden in the past, right? Things in your subconscious coming up that need to come up and be healed. So once again, if you have a partner or someone that you deeply trust to do this work with, then it can be very beneficial and highly transformative. If you don't, and you try to do this work with someone who you don't really trust, someone who doesn't truly understand it, someone who doesn't respect any kind of boundaries, or like just is disrespectful in general, then it can bring a little bit more pain because of just overall the confusion of it. So if at any point in time you feel confused, you feel like, ooh, this doesn't feel right, like something feels off, I feel confused, I feel like I'm not seeing things clearly, like I don't have all the answers, I'm not getting clear communication, then that's a sign that perhaps you're not doing this in alignment, right? That's one of the main things. It's learning how to merge yourself in relationship with other people without entirely losing yourself, and learning how to create those boundaries in relationships and communicate that with other people so that it's a safe container to grow spiritually and physically. Libra rising, this is happening in your seventh house of partnerships, relationships, and marriage. So in the seventh house, this is actually this one's a pretty difficult placement simply because it is confusion when it comes to relationships, or illusion when it comes to relationships, thinking that things are beautiful and amazing and everything feels so good and wonderful. And then whenever Neptune goes retrograde, right, or whenever things shift, all of a sudden, like the rose colored glasses get knocked off, and it's like, where am I? What mess am I in? Like, how did I end up here? And then Neptune goes direct, and then the rose colored glasses come back on, and you're like, oh no, everything's fine. Everything's good again. I don't know what I was thinking before. Everything's great. Everything feels so good. This is the best feeling relationship I ever had. And then it's just kind of like a back and forth of like, I'm confused, I'm not confused, I am confused, I'm not confused. So you can have a tendency to idealize partners, fantasize about people, like essentially create whole personas, create a whole idea of who a person is, what it is that they're like, how your life is going to be with them. That isn't even based on reality. It's just based on your own delusion. It's based off your own idea of what it is that you want. So you just like ignore red flags. It's not seeing people clearly. And as a Libra rising, it's a tendency to people please, to idealize partners, to want to see the best in them, to really want to make things work with other people because you just genuinely you love the feeling of love. And so sometimes you may just project your idealizations onto other people. You ignore the red flags that are showing up. And I would say one way to remedy this or to make it not feel so intense is to obviously have a trusted friend, have someone who you talk to that you can bounce your ideas off of. And if you have a couple of friends telling you, like, girl, that's a red flag, leave. Girl, no, you're not seeing it clearly. Girl, like, hello, snap out of it. If you have people consistently telling you that, I think it's a sign that the Neptune influence is taking over and you're not seeing things clearly. If you have any Libra friends, Libra rising friends, and you're asking them about relationship advice and you're a Libra/Libra rising, I would be mindful because they're probably also not seeing things clearly either. So you have this desire for this deep soul level, like just super spiritual, loving connection. You feel like you've met each other in a past life and it feels fated and karmic, like, oh my God, I never met anybody like you before. That's what Neptune does. It makes you feel like, whoa, this is out of this world and it feels amazing. But then stuff starts happening. And you're like, but no, we known each other in a past life. This and this and this. Look at this synchronicity. Look at how this worked out. Like, oh my God, no, we know each other. Like, I know he did this really messed up thing, or I know she did this really messed up thing, but like, we're meant to be together in this lifetime. And you start like making every type of excuse to be with this person that possibly isn't even a good person for you, simply because it feels karmic, it feels fated, it feels like it is something out of this world. That's what Neptune does. So yeah, just be mindful. It's a 14-year long transit. Obviously, not every single relationship is going to be like that. It could be possible that you actually do end up in a loving, stable relationship, someone that is very spiritually attuned, someone who is very attuned to your emotional needs, and it can feel like a fairy tale at times, but I would just be really mindful because it's very easy to fall into the delusion with this transit of the fairy tale. Okay, Scorpio rising. This is happening in your sixth house of work, routines, health. And so there's going to be a shift in your daily work, in your routines, how you take care of yourself and your health. You may decide to start going towards more meaningful work, work that helps other people, work that is healing in some sense of or another. It could be healing through actual like medical healing professions, or you could heal people through your artistic endeavors and through your creativity. You start developing more intuitive connection to your body, to your health, and you may start looking for more like holistic type of practices as well to take care of your body because Neptune is rules like the medical healing professions, and so you may find yourself more gravitated towards that. Even if you don't actually end up doing that as a profession, you just might be more interested in that in general, learning how to heal your body, how to heal other people, energy healing, energy work, stuff of that sort, even sound healing as well. I would be mindful of the shadow aspect of this is just like not having consistency with your work, with your routines, with your daily habits, because Neptune is very just like foggy, flaky. It kind of just goes with the flow. So it can be really hard to hold down a job that requires you to have a very strict schedule. Like you need to be here every single day, clock in and out. You do this type of work. It's very like bum, 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 bum. Neptune doesn't like that. Neptune doesn't like structures. And so it can be very difficult to do a regular type of job over the course of these next 14 years with Neptune transiting in your sixth house of work and routines. If your work and your routines are very heavily structured and disciplined, because that's just not going to feel right to you and your body. You want something that's a little bit more flowy. You want something that allows you to go with your creativity. And so being able to just prepare for that now as we're just starting with this and figuring out what job can I do? What can I start looking into that allows me to have that flexibility with my creativity and with my time? Sagittarius rising, this is happening in your fifth house. Fifth house has to do with your creativity, romance, self-expression. So this can be a pretty nice transit in terms of your creativity. If you're someone who's a very creative person, you're into music, you're into art, you're into fashion, however it is that you express yourself creatively, it can be a amazing next 14 years for you in order to, get your art out there to be seen. You're tapping into certain spiritual dimensions and realms that allow you to channel this energy and then channel it into your creativity and into your art. And so you're expressing certain things that other people can feel but haven't been able to put into the material through art. And so you're able to do that now. You're learning this connection between the spiritual, the emotional, and the physical, and you're able to channel this energy through your artistic and creative endeavors. Another thing is your love life with Neptune transiting in your fifth house. So the fifth house being more like dating and flings and stuff like that. You may notice that you're just more attracted and interested in partners that are more spiritual or more creative, people who allow you to express this type of creativity energy and who don't shut that down in you, who don't think that it's weird or something like that. I would say that the shadow aspect of this transit would be escapism through relationships and situationships, especially if you notice that you're like getting way too caught up in the drama of the people that you're seeing, the people that you're talking to. There's just a lot of energy being siphoned into different buckets because of different people, as opposed to using that energy to create something, to birth something yourself. Then that can be one of the shadow aspects of this, is just like escaping through pleasure. Because the fifth house is pleasure. It is literally ruled by Venus, which is all about what feels good. And so I would definitely be mindful of like gambling, of escapist tendencies. 12th house and the 5th house, I would say, are more susceptible to this Neptune transit going towards that direction of more like escapist, even possibly falling deep into hedonism, is just wanting to explore how good can we feel and pushing the boundary until you eventually get a consequence, because there's only so far you can push that boundary, right? So yeah, I would say the best way to channel this energy is through your creativity and being able to channel that into birthing something new and creative into the world, as opposed to falling deep into like hedonistic tendencies. Because once again, you may not be seeing things super clearly. You're thinking, oh, this is all just fun and games. I'm just having a good time. And like at first, yeah, it's a good time and it feels really good and it's amazing, until eventually you start getting hit with the reality of it, because eventually the reality does catch up to you. Whenever Neptune goes retrograde, it's going to catch up to you, and then Neptune goes direct and you're lost in the illusion again. Yeah, I would be mindful of that. Next, we have Capricorn rising. Capricorn rising, this is happening in your fourth house. This has to do with your home, your family, your emotional foundation. So there can be a lot of shifts and changes in your home and family life, especially like a spiritual and creative sense. If you feel like your creativity is not allowed to flourish, you may desire to isolate yourself a little bit more too. If maybe your home environment doesn't feel comfortable, you may desire to move to somewhere that is a bit more isolated or allows you to dive deeper into your spirituality and into your spiritual practice, or dive deeper into your creativity and your artistic practices. You can do a lot of emotional healing from like home and family type of dynamics. You can do a lot of like ancestral healing, going deep into the family lineage and going back and seeing like how that has been affecting you currently, and just like healing those old familial wounds so that you can actually unblock ancestral or karmic blocks that you've have accumulated over time, or even through previous lifetimes that your ancestors have accumulated, right? The shadow aspect of this is feeling ungrounded or unsafe in your environment, feeling like you don't know where your home is, feeling like you don't really feel at home anywhere. Just it's overall like a feeling of just like lost, right? Feeling like you don't really belong anywhere, like you still haven't found your tribe yet. So that could be the opposite end of this transit. And it's just trying to help you find that place of home, somewhere that you can feel safe and connected with, which is ultimately with yourself. It doesn't have to be a certain specific place or with certain specific people. Ultimately, you have to feel safe and at home with yourself, wherever it is that you are. So Aquarius rising, this is happening in your third house. This has to do with your mind, your communication, how you speak to other people, new ways of communicating and sharing ideas, especially like spiritual ideas, ideas of healing that help other people heal. that help bring new spiritual awarenesses in other people. You can definitely be one of those thought leaders in a spiritual space that expresses ideas on like healing and helping other people in bringing new ideas to life, storytelling. However, the shadow side of this is similar to the ninth house with the Leo rising. Aquarius rising also has this very similar thing where sometimes they can think that they're better than everyone else. And with Neptune being in Aries, Aries is all about the self, and this is happening in your third house of your communication. This is another one of those signs that you have the susceptibility or the probability of suddenly thinking that just because you are on a platform and you're speaking and you're saying all of these ideas that a lot of people really like and a lot of people resonate with, you have this spiritual type of narcissism or this spiritual type of ego where suddenly you think you're better than everyone else or that your ideas are the only ideas that matter. There's also a possibility of people misinterpreting what you're saying and miscommunication. It's teaching you that you can communicate, you can share ideas, you can share your thoughts. Not everyone will resonate with them, and some people will. And just because some people do doesn't necessarily mean that you're above them or better than everyone else. At the end of the day, you're just sharing information and you're trying to help other people expand their consciousness and expand their awareness on certain topics and certain things. But that does not make you better than everyone else simply because you know these things and you're trying to help other people and teach them these things. Not every thought that you have is truth, and you shouldn't ultimately believe that you are like the ultimate end all be all person that everyone needs to believe in, that everyone needs to take your word as truth, because sometimes there's multiple truths. So yeah, I would just be mindful of making sure you're using your voice as a way to speak and communicate your thoughts and ideas, but not as a way to think that you're somehow better than everyone else. And finally, the last sign is Pisces rising. So if you're Pisces, Pisces rising, this is happening in your second house of money, self-worth, of your values, your resources. So this is redefining what you value. This is a desire to make money in a creative or in a spiritual way. It is also changing your relationship to finances and making it not super structured and not super rigid. Even though in the beginning, so the first 2 years of this transit, we do have Saturn in the sign of Aries as well, which is bringing structure. It is bringing discipline to your finances. But once Saturn moves out of the sign of Aries, which will be after 2 years, I believe it's 2028, it's going to move out. And we're still going to have Neptune in the sign of Aries. So it's still going to be a force there. So you're going to learn the boundaries. You're going to learn the discipline of your finances in the first 2 years. And then after Saturn leaves, you're going to be able to be a little bit more fluid and not have such stern, strict boundaries. Like maybe you needed to create a budget and you need to stay within this budget in order to feel financially safe and financially stable. But when Saturn moves out of that and Neptune is still within it, you can kind of remove those boundaries a little bit more and be a little bit more fluid and be a little bit more open. There could be a little bit of financial instability with this transit. I hate to say it. And it can also bring like you just you undervaluing yourself and maybe selling your services or like putting yourself out there for a price that's much less than what you're owed. So I would definitely use this time as a way to learn value in yourself. What is your own self-worth? And realizing that what you get paid, your financial abundance, is a reflection of your own self-worth. Once again, doing either like a spiritual or a creative outlet as a way to gain finances and abundance is also something that's possible with this transit. Healing practices as well, doing something that helps other people. If you're doing it from a place of like, I want to help other people, I want to heal other people, I'm sharing my art, I'm sharing my creativity as a way to like help encourage some change in the world or to just help people heal, to help people feel good, then ultimately I think Neptune will bring its blessings. There could be, once again, a possibility of just not necessarily seeing things super clearly with your finances, but I feel like that would be more of a thing towards the end of this transit. because that's when Saturn is going to be completely gone. And so it could lead to just like some ungroundingness in your finances. So just try to make sure that you're staying grounded. You're not being super delusional in your finances and being like, oh, it's all going to work out. Or like, I'll just swipe the card and worry about it later. Like, no, that can lead into some pretty serious problems later down the road if you're just, I'll figure it out later. I'll worry about it later. Just swipe it. I don't care. Like, it's all going to work out. And then eventually, next thing you know, you're like $20,000 in debt and you don't know where you're gonna get your money from because you were hoping it was all just gonna work out and you didn't really have a plan or anything in action to make it all work out. So, yeah, I would definitely be mindful of that. But yeah, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you have any questions, you need me to explain something a little bit more down in the comments, leave your questions down below. Once again, if you want a chart reading done by me, I have some links in the description down below, and you can find my website there and order and book a reading. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video.